Continuing right along with the maths and the utilities, I have now jumped into dealing with, I believe it's the max and the mins here. Yeah, and the rounds and extremes. Just stayed to this area. We'll go into average next. Pretty simple stuff. So I thought I'd just make an interesting little toy because I just keep honing and practicing my skills. Basically, the things that you could bring into here, the min-max function does node does pretty much what the other two do, and you could always really flatten numbers and get rid of floats by dealing with floors and ceilings, which I'm not going to use in the rounding tool, but it's there. So basically, I'll apply it in the script over and about this area. So it's a long script, so let's just go through it, and you'll see kind of repetitive way I think. Built a range, built a series of points that was motivated by two graph types, conic, I think it is. Pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah, two conic. Let me check again. Yeah, two conic types. They function pretty well. You have shapes. You have power over top of these forms. We'll take it back into shaded and bring out all the objects. And you can see I have the power to shape these very interesting things. And this is where I threw in the max and min tools to make this piece of geometry. So I'll show you how I made that. Basically, I went in and I set up a system of curves based on these two conic functions. My kids are being loud. I interpolate that curve, and with that curve, I then grab its start and ends, and I also mirror that, so I have two curves, and I find the intersection of those two, finding start and end of that one as well. So I start and end, start and end. I move that in the next direction, so I have the ability to move that on an integer value, even though it doesn't have to be, and I draw a line between here and here and here and here. So kind of interesting to see what I'm making. This line, this line, this line, and the mirrored line. So I've got this kind of strange shape that I've made as the basis of this built on those graph mappers. I'm going to join the curves so they're all together. I'm going to break them into sections and deal with edge surfaces. Once I have that edge surface, boy, my kids are loud today, I'm going to extrude it. That's about it. Have a nice little shape to play with. And I didn't finish there. I thought, okay, I did come down here and I applied this data, which I'm going to bring in much later. So we're going to continue. You're going to see where I brought it into the scale function. I thought it would be best to use the min and maxes from the past ranges. And what are these conic curves? And you can switch it up with this conic curve as well. But it's basically choosing numbers. You can see the data that it's choosing differently, and I'll show you how each one changes the shape of the function. After I had the extrusion, I thought, well, let's look at the faces, and let's set up which edges, and I found out which ones work with the fillet tool that I wanted. And you have all these things to use blend and metric tools, and I've set it so I can actually have pretty good control over smoothing and rounding edges. Now I'm getting into some geometry and things I used to do with CAD programs, but I like this shape that I made. I think it's pretty cool. And I'm not sure what I'll end up using it as. Finding its centroid, I scale it, and I'm scaling according to, you can see this one and that one, each being scaled differently. This geometry is being scaled in one direction. That's actually affected this geometry later on. Now you could use the same data to come out of each one because this one's sitting at 12 and this one's sitting at 12. So the list length could come out of each one. I probably, since I pushed this one forward, should use that, but I'll show you. You can always swap this geometry like that, and you get a little different subtleties in what you do. Very subtle, actually, if you see what I might end up doing with those points. So I'm just going to use that data to do a different scale factor on each one. It's hard to see because they're all internal. These scaled are smaller, so if you look closely, you'll see there's objects within the other objects. So this data is actually a little more uniform than the other one. So what I'm going to do is grab this one and I'll get a little different scaling factor. You can see the subtleties of that. And of course, if I put it in something that you could see, ghosted perhaps. No, nothing's happening because I have the Rhino window going. You can kind of see a little bit in technical. Anyway, we'll see what I end up doing them. I end up moving them and putting them through a piped variable pipe, which I like to do. We don't have to look at that right now. I actually didn't use my curve on frame there. I basically put them over onto this curve I generated, which was a simple helix. I broke that up, have control over amplifying it and moving it basically put my perpendicular frames across there and kept them on a good angle to it, and then oriented all that geometry onto it. So you see the change in those geometries. So let's go here, and of course you can throw the pipe through the center. I'm not going to do that right now. Well, maybe for visualization purposes, I'll do both. Nah, you won't be able to see it. Let's just go into this one, and let's see if making that change back here on the scale, if I grab this scale, it would change it a little bit. And you can see it does have an effect on not going so tiny. So actually, I kind of like that one. Go back to this one. That really shrinks it. I think this one probably is better. So I'll stay with that one. And that's just using the min and max as a deciding factor, and then I threw it into a render. So when I bring it in, you can see the colors of what was being made. Actually, a nice little model. I actually like it. Uh, kind of purposeless, but also practicing up my skills, orienting planes, having control, and getting into some very smooth, beautiful geometries like this one. That's really what it's all about. I'll take it into a couple of different. The script's fairly long and playful. It just kind of keeps going. But I'll pull it out of here. I apologize my kids were so loud, but you know what? I have no control over them anymore. Rendered, you're going to see them in their colors. If I so choose, I'm showing everything in the file right now. If I go into Grasshopper and take that off, it should be able to see the render a little better. Nah, it's all right. Let's just take it in there, leave it all on, just for information purposes. Pretty congested with everything. We'll take a look at it. Technical, and something's happening when I'm hitting this. Nope, it's good. And there's the front view of it. Pretty strange new geometries, nice form. I really wish my kids could be quiet. Hang on, Ellie. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching. We'll keep going with the series and see what happens.